Good evening, everyone, and welcome to class. Happy Sunday, everybody. So, this is 17 o'clock, and class is about to start. Our facilitator is already in class. So, I believe we all have party chairpersons now. So, it's the responsibility of a party chairperson to ensure their members are in class. So, once you come into class, you sign in with your name and your party. So, we'll kickstart by 17:05. Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. This is 1705 and it's time for class. So the facilitator has been in class since before 5 o'clock. So I expected us to all be here before then. So, and the number is a bit low this evening. So I expect people to come into class and gain more this evening. So our facilitator for this evening, Mr. Biang Livinus, will be taking us on the political party structures. And I believe it's very important at this point that we all have a political party. So I'm just going to be reading through the bio of our facilitator for today, Mr. Ibiang Livinus. He's currently a public health and health safety expert and a professional in politics with an over 19 years working in the social sector to strengthen institutional reforms that can lead to social change. He had led several student youth movements and has been involved in human rights advocacy. He was the former FCT interim chairman of Alliance for New Nigeria Party, ANN, and it was under his leadership that the party built the structures at the local government and wards level before his accession to the office of the national vice chairman of the party for the South-South zone after the national convention in 2018. In his capacity, he served in several committees, prominent amongst which is the Security Committee, which he chaired, the Partnership Committee with other parties for the general elections in 2019. He was also a member of the National Campaign Council of the party and served as the South-South Zonal Director and Chairman of the National Campaign. Ibiang is a graduate of the University of Calabar and holds several certifications in his chosen field. He holds, in addition, a Master's in Business Administration from the Ahmadu Bello University and currently a PhD candidate in International Public Health. So, ladies and gentlemen, our facilitator for this evening, Mr. Ibiang Venus. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, sir. Permission before you proceed. When they read Mr. Livinus' profile, who I like to refer and I would refer to continually as chairman, there's part of it that's not said, and I would like to elaborate on that part. While I was in COA party as National Public Secretary and senatorial aspirant, 3 months to the primaries, COA made a partnership, a CUPP partnership with PDP. I was not taken at National Executive Council level. As a member of the National Executive Council, I disagreed with that position and I gave them 48 hours to rescind. COA did not rescind. I stood on my integrity. And Mr. Livinus from time had always recognized me as a great candidate. Throughout that time, his party has always supported. They didn't even have a candidate. So there was a rush for, the term used then was the CR7 of politics. For me to get into a party, we had just a short time. And Mr. Livinus made my time at Alliance for New Nigeria memorable, which is the beginning of everything you know today, the electoral college, everything. So when I call him my chairman, I know why I call him my chairman. It's a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, ED, KL. As is usually styled, I want to appreciate you for that background. Sometimes it makes me feel as if I wonder if I really merit all of this, but thanks to you and to the team, and thanks, Charlie, for that intro. May I take this opportunity to once again welcome this particular cohort to this very unique session of political parties and structures. I must say that I'm very impressed that we have party officials who have joined this particular cohort. And I know that this time we are going to have together is not going to be just memorable, but one that will go with you in your political journey. So once again, I welcome you all. And to the administrative staff of the Electoral College, I want to thank you for the great job you've been doing under the leadership of the ED. I must say that I'm truly very proud to be part of you and for the privilege you have given me to speak to cohorts, different cohorts we've had, on political parties and structures. So again, given that the participants of this cohort are political party officials, I know that the ideas we're going to share will going to help us to be more inspired and inclined towards political party management, and in ensuring that we build the right structures within the parties that will help take us to where we need to be. And I must tell you why political parties are very important, based on my experience in foreign into politics. So it's very important that for those of us who hold these offices, make very judicious use of these offices and ensure that these offices produce the kind of candidates that we truly expect to have in electioneering process. So having said that, I'll proceed straight to giving us some background.
Good evening, sir. Sorry
Yes.
for cutting in. This is Lisa. Well,
Okay, Lisa,
always
yeah.
a pleasure to have you. Okay, no, I just wanted to say that the parties are actually pseudo parties. We share the students into pseudo parties for the duration of the course, so that they will have like a real life example of how it works. Yes. So
Amazing.
that's what they're writing in the chat box. Yes.
Amazing. That's great.
Thank you, sir.
So to add to what Lisa said, they run for elections, local government elections, governorship and presidential. We give them a NEC responsibility, like this cohort in 13th have just completed their NEC elections, so they have party chairman, etc. We try to make it as realistic as possible to the terms which are allowed with the Electoral Act. So pushed up our actions a notch, sir. Thank you very much.
You guys have upped the ante. I really, really appreciate this, and I'm glad you have taken the step to have this kind of arrangement. I think for me this is excellent. This is a very good plan. Kudos to you all. Thanks, Edie, for that, and Lisa. All right, Lisa, are you projecting, or should I do from this end?
Yes, Chola is helping with that. It's already on the screen.
Oh, okay, I see. Great.
Yes.
All right. So, political parties. Just as a background, and I like giving this background because it will help us to really understand why political parties are very important and why we need to have credible structures within the party. It's very, very important to understand. And first, I want to come from the angles of the origins of political parties, given the fact that political parties are fundamental to every democratic process, and there can never be any democracy without political parties. This is one thing that is sure. And if you look at our present political system, you agree with me that they are all hinged on, political parties that we have in the country, and we have quite a number of them. Of course, we will have an opportunity to mention some of the political parties we have within the political space. So democracy as a form of government, actually delegates political power through an electoral process. And of course, you see that everybody in Nigeria cannot hold office. Every citizen of Nigeria cannot hold office. But there is an office that is occupied by every citizen. That is the office of the citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But the other political offices, like the president, vice president, senators, and all of that, governors, deputy governors, House of Assembly members, local government chairmen, they are limited. They are few. Okay, so you have very few persons who can occupy those persons. If you look at the total population of Nigeria, which is projected to be at about 230 or to 250 million, you see that you cannot match that against the political offices that we have in the land, which means we then need to delegate political power to a certain group of people whom we have tested and trusted. And I'll tell you why I use the word tested and trusted. Tested because they went through a political party process of selection to emerge as candidates. And then based on the trust we have on the political parties that they've done the right thing, we went ahead to elect them into office. It means that by process of that election, we have delegated powers, our powers, to these representatives. So that's where the delegation of authority comes in. in a democracy. So political parties are the platforms through which power is contested. Of course, you can't contest for any position in Nigeria if you are not a member of a political party, because the Constitution of Nigeria, as presently obtains, does not make provision for independent candidacy. Therefore, everybody who is interested in contesting for any position in the land must do that through the political party platform. And there is a history to political parties in Nigeria, which dates back as far as the British colonial period. And it's interesting to know that one of those who actually started these political party structures is someone by the name Herbert Macaulay. I'm sure some of us may have had the name. And of course, if you look at your Naira notes, you'll find Herbert Macaulay somewhere. Yes, that same Herbert Macaulay. He was the grandson of Bishop Ajayi Crowther, and he formed the first political party in Nigeria, the Nigerian National Democratic Party, way back in 1922. So if you go back and look at history books, you see all of these things there. Like I said, we are not dwelling on this history, but just to give us some background as to why political parties are very important. So back then, just about 8 years after the amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914, we had a political party that was, put together by this great man. The question in the minds of many will be why? Why did they have to set up a political party, or why should there even be, political parties in Nigeria? So this, of course, brings us to the point where we begin to look at the development of political parties in Nigeria. And of course, I've stated that it dates back to, 1922. So we had the establishment of the Nigerian Legislative Council, of course, which provided some political space for participation of Nigerian indigenes. Remember, it was a colonial regime, and the colonial masters were actually the leaders. They occupy all of those political positions. Their appointees are the ones who man important positions in the country at the time, or in the amalgamated regions of the country. But then there were agitations, just for us to know, there were agitations for inclusivity in the political governance of the country. And this led to the formation of the Nigerian Legislative Council to provide the platform for our people to get into governance. Now, at this time, franchise was only limited to 2 cities, which were the 2 big cities where the colonial masters were, the Lagos and the and Calabar. Now, there was a more vigorous process of party formation, which was, of course, initiated with the formation of the Nigerian Youth Movement in 1938, and subsequently the National Council of Nigeria and Cameroon, NCNC, in 1944, under the leadership of the same Herbert Macaulay. And it's interesting for you to know that at the time, some regions of the Cameroon were part of Nigeria, and that's why we had this NCNC. They were part of Nigeria. And Cameroonians today know that they were at some point, together with Nigeria on 3 issues around boundary delineation and all of that and so on. So, and then we had other parties like the Action Group, which emerged in 1948, while the Northern People's Congress was established in 1951. So from the names of these parties, you can see quite a number of them were, more of regional political blocs. The Action Group was in the West, the Northern People's Congress was in the North, and then the NCNC was largely around the southeastern part of the country. So these parties consider themselves as political expressions of ethno-regional associations, with the Action Group in the West evolving from the what was then known as the Yoruba Cultural Association, the Egbe Omo Oduduwa, so that was where the Action Group came from. Now, of course, as we noted, the Northern People's Congress was based in the North and evolved from the Northern Cultural Association, the Jamiar Mutaning Arewa, and then the National Congress of Nigerian Citizens, NCNC, as it later, evolved into, it started as a national party, but later narrowed to the social base, to a cultural association, that is the Igbo State Union of the Southeast. So this is how the parties were configured at the time, basically regional blocks. And this, of course, gave room for struggle against each other in configuring the politics of the First Republic, and leading to, contests by elites of major ethnic formations, the Hausa Fulani, the Yoruba, the Igbo, and of course, there is the marginalization of the minority. Don't forget, these regional blocks represent the major ethnic nationalities of Nigeria, but it doesn't mean that there are no other nationalities. There are other minor nationalities. So what it means is that you naturally will have a marginalization of the minority groups in the country. The question is, has that stopped as of today? Well, I didn't need you to answer. Just a rhetorical question. Interestingly, within the political parties, there are power sharing arrangements, and we can see that in the First Republic. For instance, during the 1959 elections, there was no single party that was able to win the majority in the national elections. Not a single party. What then happened? The NPC then decided to combine with the NCNC to form what you call the national government. So you can see how the parties were able to gain power at the national level. So it was an alliance between the Northern People's Congress and the NCNC from the Southeast coming together to form the national government. This brought a gentleman known as Abubakar Tafawa Balewa in as a prime minister at the time, and Nnamdi Azikiwe as the governor general, as he then was, on independence in 1960. So this was how political parties had helped to evolve the national government at the time. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe later became the first president of Nigeria in 1963, because this was a very period Nigeria became a republic, while Tafawa Balewa maintained his position as the prime minister. Now, it's instructive to note that there were elections conducted in 1964. Now, of course, those elections were marred with electoral fraud, and this precipitated the political crisis that led to the collapse of the First Republic. Now, the dissatisfaction in the system led to splitting of the NCNC and the MPC. Remember, they came together to form the national government. And when the elections were held, of course, there were dissatisfaction, between the ranks of this alliance. And so the political crisis that was precipitated at the time. So as a result of the disagreement, NCNC joined with a faction of the Action Group led by Obafemi Awolowo to form the United Progressive Grand Alliance. This was the outcome of the marriage between a faction of the AG and the NCNC, while the Northern People's Congress, on the other hand, joined with the remaining faction of the Action Congress led by Samuel Ladoke Akintola. I'm sure we know these names, or we've heard about these names, and I will implore us to go back to history and look at some of these personalities and the roles they play. There is a lot that we can learn from all of them. So that portion of Action Group led by Samuel Ladoke Akintola joined forces with the Northern People's Congress to form what was then the Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP. Now, thereafter, we had the Civil War and the foray of the military into Nigerian political system. So Nigeria's political space witnessed significant changes in the evolution of political parties. Now, that civil war lasted between 1967 to 1970. I don't want to talk about some of the things that happened before the Civil War. Of course, you know that Nigeria had its first coup in 1966, and then later on in the year, we had the counter coup, and then, of course, we had the Civil War, which broke out. and lasted between 1967 to 1970. Now, that was basically what ended the First Republic. So when you hear First Republic, this was the period of the First Republic, the period preceding the independence down till 1963 when Nigeria became a republic and subsequently experienced the first military coup and the counter coup. All of those issues, the political disagreements, all of this resulted in the collapse of the First Republic. And then we had other political developments in the Second Republic. Now, in the run-up to the Second Republic, there were about 150 political parties that were announced. 150 political parties that were announced. Now, about 50 of them were fully constituted as parties, with only 18 that were able to feel that they had any chance of meeting the imposed conditions and submitted the applications. Now, what it therefore means is that for all of these political parties that were announced, only if 18 of them felt comfortable that they could actually meet the imposed criteria for them to be, registered as national political parties, because there are criteria, of course, as enshrined in the Constitution, that they need to meet to be registered as political party. Meanwhile, the states recognized only 5 of them in 1978. Don't forget that this was a military regime at the time, okay, that was looking to transition to a civilian government. So part of the transition process was to midwife the evolution and establishment of political parties. But then there are set criteria that the political parties or proposed political parties must meet to actually be considered as political parties. And these are some of the recognized political parties. In 1978, we had the National Party of Nigeria, NPN. We had the Unity Party of Nigeria, UPN. We had the Nigerian People's Party, NPP. We had the People's Redemption Party, PRP. We also had the Great Nigerian People's Party, GNPP. So the 1979 Constitution banned independent candidacy. So you can imagine when this issue of independent candidacy was actually knocked off from our Constitution. So it wasn't today, started way back. And from contesting elections and outlawed regional, ethnic, religious, and extremist parties. And I think this is understandable because what we want, what the country wanted at the time, was to have national political parties, not just regional political parties or ethnic political parties or religious, political parties and so on. So because those will be counterproductive to the growth, development, and advancement of the Nigerian society. So it was therefore instituted by law that the parties must meet certain criteria to be considered worthy for registration. Please confirm you can hear me very well. Can someone confirm you can hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, I just want to be sure so that I'm not talking to myself alone. All right, great. So some developments that took place in the Second Republic. Now, one dominant party emerged from the transition process in 1978, and that's the National Party of Nigeria, which with roots in the regional politics of the First Republic. So what basically that tells us is that the NPN has its roots from the First Republic because you had some of those individuals who played very key roles in the First Republic in that political party and across most of the political parties anyway. Now, the founding fathers of the NPN systematically waxed a coalition from the segmented and disparate fractions that considered the Nigerian political class. And basically with efforts towards building a party that will stand the test of time. Now, in 1979, elections revealed that the political parties retained strong regional bases and ended up sharing the votes without any of them completely dominating the others. Now, look at the irony of the whole thing. We had a national party, a party that seemed to be more dominant, that is the MPN. But during the elections, the voting pattern clearly shows that the voting pattern was split across regional lines. That's basically what we're talking about. And you can see a similarity between what happened in the Second Republic to what we experienced even in the last elections. So it helps you to begin to look at all of issues from a very broad perspective. So for those who may be interested in political analysis, looking at how electoral votes are spread across the country, it will draw your mind to what happened in the Second Republic and help you to then begin to make projections into how future elections or voting pattern might be. So when you find analysts giving those analyses on national TV and telling you, oh, this is the way the votes are going to go, a lot of times it is based on what happened in the previous elections, whether you're looking at it from the First Republic or Second Republic, Third Republic, as the case may be, and of course in previous elections that have taken place in the country. So the 1979 elections revealed all of this. Now, ideological politics was strong with the People's Redemption Party, which was an offshoot of NEPO, Northern Element Progressive Union, and the Unity Party of Nigeria, which was also an offshoot of the Action Group, where Awolowo came from, and which was why today people keep talking about education in the western part of the country, because the western part of the country seems to be more advanced, more have progressed much more than any other region in terms of education. This was because of the ideological background that was laid by, Awolowo at the time. And that had continued even till date, okay? So this was where we find some of these ideological expressions within political parties. Now, both parties were said to be on the left, while the other three parties were said to be on the right. Now, elections held in 1979, we had a government that was headed by Alhaji Shehu Shagari, okay, and with the Vice President, Dr. Alex Ekweme, at the time. And then we had another elections in 1983. And after that elections, we had a coup, and that coup led to the blackout, which lasted between 1983 to 1985. This was a period that Muhammadu Buhari overthrew the government of Alhaji Shehu Shagari and enthroned a military regime. So that's why it's a blackout. And he was in office with General Tunde Diagbon, who was, the Chief of Staff Supreme Headquarters at the time, and he's 2IC, okay? And they stayed in office from 1983 to 1985. Their government was later overthrown by General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, who was then Chief of Army Staff. So we had another blackout from 1985 to 1993, where Babangida reigned supreme as the military president of Nigeria, and then midwife the process for the transition to another civilian regime, which of course ushered in what we call the Third Republic. Remember, we had the First Republic, which was botched because of the dissatisfaction in the elections, and of course all of the military coup and counter coup that happened. All of those factors led to the end of the First Republic. And then we had the Civil War, which later evolved into what we call the Second Republic, where we had Alhaji Shehu Shagari become the president of Nigeria. That was the Second Republic. That Second Republic was truncated by General Muhammad Buhari from 1983 to 1985. And then we had another coup again by Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida in 1985 down to 1993, where he midwife the transition to a Third Republic. And that Third Republic only lasted for a very short time, 1992 to 1993. So the Third Republic that never was witnessed a flurry of activities. And we had the Third Republican Constitution, which was drafted in 1989. And then the establishment of new political parties, which were later banned by Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. His government then established two political parties, the Social Democratic Party, SDP, which was, of course, considered slightly to the left, and then the National Republican Convention, NRC, which, of course, was considered slightly to the right. And when elections were held in 1993, and MQ Abiola of the Social Democratic Party won, Babangida annulled that elections, thus precipitating the collapse of the Third Republic before it even took off. So you can see, he annulled the election, and I don't know how many of us know the reasons why the elections were annulled to date. I'm not sure. I know the reason why the elections were annulled, you know. So, but Babangida gave some reasons. I don't know how many people took those reasons any serious, but then elections were annulled. And that was how MK Abiola lost out in an election that was considered the freest and fairest election conducted in Nigeria in 1993, the June 12th elections. So what happened thereafter? We had a blackout from 1993 to 1999. And I'll tell you, what was the blackout? First, when Babangida annulled that elections, there were series of agitations rather, in the country. Protest upon protest, across the country, seeking to validate the mandate of the people that was freely given at the polls to Bashirun MKO Abiola. So, and there was also pressure on Babangida to leave because the people were tired of military regime. And this was a man who, from becoming the head of state, later, what do you call it? Mutated into what you call a military president. You see, there's military president and the vice president. Of course, how do you have a military president where you are not elected? It's only someone who is elected that becomes a president. So, but that is Babangida for you. And that was why they called him the political Maradona at the time. So that was how he did his Maradona game until he landed us in 1993 when he annulled the elections. And then in order to kind of pacify Nigerians, he said he was stepping aside as a president and pulling out of the military. But in doing so, because the Constitution of Nigeria, which was given to us by him, did not establish or provided for a lacuna, he set up what we call the interim national government. It was a transitional government headed by Chief Ernest Shonokon, an elder statesman. Now, this contraption called interim national government was not recognized by the Constitution. And so there were litigations against that government. Our late son, Chief Gani Fawemi of blessed memory, led this protestation. And of course, it won a position in court, which declared the government as illegal. But that's what we had at the time. But look at it. There was the highest military officer who was serving in that government as the Secretary of Defense. That is General Sani Abacha, who had been with Babangida all along. In fact, to many political pundits, they felt that it was just a strategy to hand over the government to General Sani Abacha. These are all political speculations. We don't know what exactly happened. But what we knew was that that man was left behind. The question was, Babangida was pulling out. Why didn't you go with the likes of Abacha, who's been with him? If you really want to make an interim national government have its way in providing leadership and midwifing a transition to a democratically elected government in Nigeria? These were the questions many political pundits were asking. Why leave behind a man who had become so ambitious because he felt that it was his own turn too to become the head of state of Nigeria after IBB? In fact, many felt that there was some hidden agreement between IBB and Abacha, and there were disagreement between them, that he has to stay behind so that he can accomplish his own ambition. The events that later, took place seem to kind of align with those who believed that those disagreements between IBB and Abacha were actually true. And look at what happened. In 1993, the interim government of XIII006 was overthrown via a palace coup by General Sani Abacha. And then all of the political structures were dissolved. And General Sani Abacha became the head of state of Nigeria from 1993 to 1998, when he suddenly passed on to the great beyond. And the lot fell on General Abdulsalami Abubakar, who was the then chief of defense staff, to become the head of state of Nigeria. It was General Abdulsalami Abubakar that midwife what we call today the 1999 Constitution, which has had several amendments and became the basis for why that Constitution is now styled the 1999 Constitution as amended. It was General Abdulsalami Abubakar's government that gave that Constitution, which of course ushered in what was now, or what is now, the Fourth Republic. So the Fourth Republic began in 1999. And up to date, we are still in the Fourth Republic. Now, some interesting things about the Fourth Republic. For its first election, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, recognized only 3 political parties: the People's Democratic Party, the All People's Party, and the Action for Democracy, AD. The Action for Democracy held sway in the southwest part of the country and Lagos. And its arrowhead was Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is currently the president of Nigeria. And then we had the People's Democratic Party. We had the All People's Party. Now, following a Supreme Court judgment on the case brought before it between Balarabe Musa and INEC, conditions for registration of political parties were liberalized. And this was basically to take out the powers of the states to regulate the registration of political parties. And so this led to the expansion of the political space, with more political parties coming on board, and there are so many of them. Prominent among the new parties are the Action Congress of Nigeria, the Congress for Political Change, CPC, and the People's Progressive Alliance. And there are so many, like I mentioned, about 63 of them. So if you go back in history, you find a lot of all of these political parties. For want of time, we will not be able to go through them. In addition, there are many other small parties that took advantage of the liberalization of political party space to register and, seek to contest political positions in the country. Now, on the 18th of August 2011, INEC deregistered 7 political parties that did not contest for any elective position in 2011. I want to say this. With the advent of the Fourth Republic and the liberalization of the political space, a lot of political parties, were bettered, were established. Some of these political parties were regarded as briefcase political parties or mushroom political parties, some of which were headed by father, mother, son, not the Labour Party logo anyway, please. So what I mean is you have a man, his wife, and children making up a political party. And this was at a time where political parties were receiving grants from the government at a point, so it was a big incentive for people to set up political parties. And some people were basically running political parties just so that they can access those grants from government, and they weren't doing anything with it. No political education was provided despite accessing such funds. They weren't building their political structures across the country. So they were basically accessing the fund and they were being used for, their individual purposes. So this, of course, negates the whole essence of providing those small grants to political parties. Now, at the end of 2012, an additional 31 political parties were deregistered, leaving only 27 registered political parties. A full list of these political parties that were registered and currently registered parties, is not here, but I'm sure if you can Google some of these and you can see some of those political parties that were deregistered by INEC. And if you check on INEC record, of course, you see a whole lot, because every political party is registered with the Independent National Electoral Commission. So you'll be able to see, based on the existing political parties, those that have been deregistered as well. Now, having said that, what I've done was just to give us a background to political parties, why they are important, for us to have a grasp before we can talk about political party structures. Now, we're going to look at the structures of political party. But before then, let's look at the Nigerian political landscape. Within the Nigerian political landscape are several critical stakeholders. Who are they? You and I are critical stakeholders, politicians, political parties. We also have political movements, that is, movements that are not yet political parties, but with the intention to become political parties eventually. We have the electoral systems. We have the electoral umpires, that is the INEC, the State Independent Electoral Commissions, and all of that. We have the electorates, you and I. We have the judiciary, the legislative, we have the executives, we have traditional institutions, pressure groups, civil society, and situation rooms that have been created. And more recently, of course, we have those who consider themselves technicians. These ones are not career politicians as we are, but professionals in different walks of life who have chosen to come into politics and give a new direction to what politics should actually be. And all of these critical stakeholders serve to deepen what we call the political culture of the Nigerian political space. So we've talked about political parties, and I'm sure from all that we've discussed, you will agree with me that a political party is basically an organized group of people with at least roughly similar political aims and opinions that seeks to influence public policy by getting its candidates elected to public offices. Now, it's important to note that parties are deeply and durably entrenched in specific substructures of the society. So every part of the Nigerian society have an expression of political parties. There's nowhere, no part of this country you will go to that you will find a political party. This is fundamentally the truth. Anywhere you go, you find political parties. And why is this so? This is basically for purpose of sustainability and for us to be able to have what we call a functional democracy. Like I said, democracy is about delegation of authority. And this delegation can only occur in space where we have political parties as a vehicle for attaining political power. Now, political parties serve as a link. They link the government institutions to the elements of the civil society in a free and fair society. So you find at every level, civil society groups engaging with, political parties at different levels. And they are also necessary for the proper functioning of any modern democratic political system. Every political system that you have, every government that you have, even the current government, engages with the substructures. That is, the state, the local government, the communities, the wards, to the list of the platforms that we have, or political platforms that we have in the country, through a political party. So it's important to understand that political parties are very, very important. They are very, very important. And I'm stressing it. I'm stressing it for each and every one of us to understand that political parties are very, very important. Now, political parties, what are they? We've talked about political parties. We've defined that. And we have also given reasons why political parties exist and indicated that they are deeply entrenched within the substructures of Nigerian society for various reasons, to provide that linkage, to provide that engagement platform between the political party institutions and the institutions of government and the civil society and community members as well, and also to foster, continuous and sustainable engagement for proper functioning of political systems in the country. It's also instructive to know that political parties basically solicit and articulate public policy priorities. So an APC government will tell you it has a defined manifesto. And the manifesto is a tool for engaging with the wider society, especially when it comes to soliciting for support, either for the government of the day or soliciting for electoral votes during the electioneering process. Of course, if you follow the political trends in the country today, you will agree with me that members of the political party called APC are currently soliciting for Nigerians to come together. I'm sure you hear all of that every day in the news, in the newspapers, social media. You see their members canvassing for support for the current government, indicating that the current government is making bold steps. In the words of the president, we are taking baby steps towards liberating Nigeria from the doldrums of economic hardships that we're currently experiencing today. And so many will ask the big question, how did we get here? I thought we transited from the same government, the same political party to this present government. So we had an APC government headed by Muhammadu Buhari, which was in power for 8 years. And now we have another APC government. So, so you hear a lot about support for the current government. So yes, political parties do that. They solicit and they articulate public policy priorities. And we are seeing some of these public policy priorities. Some of them, according to the government, is aimed at pulling Nigeria from the current austere situation it finds itself. You look at the Naira today exchanges with a dollar at 1,400 Naira. So the government is saying as a public policy priority, they are now giving a window for banks not to retain more than 20% of our FX, which means all banking institutions must dispose of the current FX they have in stock. None must be above 20%. Otherwise, government can take certain actions against it. Those are public policy priorities of the current government, perhaps to see how to strengthen the Naira against the dollar. So I've just given that as an example for us to appreciate what I meant by public policy priorities. Secondly, political parties socialize and educate voters and citizens in the functioning of political and electoral systems and the generation of, general political values. Look, I can disagree with this. Yes, this is my presentation, but of course I can disagree with it. These are political theorizations, okay, of research materials, that this is what political parties do. This is what political parties ought to do in Nigeria. But the question is, are they doing it? To what extent have you been educated about voters' rights and voters and citizens' rights? Functionality of political parties? To what extent? This is the reason the Electoral College is filling that gap. For most of us, the Electoral College is providing that awareness, that education to citizens through the structured cohorting of the politeracy program that the Electoral College is doing. So it is filling the gap for those who are actually, or who actually should be doing that, but they are not doing it. And that's why I say I disagree with that second point, even though it is my presentation. That's what they should be doing, but they are not doing it. And so we have the Electoral College, we have the School of Policy and Political Governance, the SPPG. These are independent structures that are currently filling the gap that the political parties are supposed to be filling. Political parties balance opposing demands and converting them into general policy. Of course, you have opposition parties in every government. So the views of the opposition government are usually, converted into general policy. For instance, I'll give you an example. One political candidate, one presidential candidate is known for saying that while he was in government in the past, he had cut down significantly on the cost of governance. And there is no need for a government that is telling us to tighten our belts to be driving around with very large convoy. It's a drain on taxpayers' resources. And so we had a situation where the current government today announced some weeks back that they are cutting down on the convoy of ministers and convoy of appointees of government, and even on the convoy of the president himself. This is how political parties, okay, balance and also convert opposing views into general policies of government. So that's why opposition governments are very, very important. Opposition is important in every democratic dispensation. So they channel public opinion from citizens to government. Of course, if people are complaining that there is hunger in the land, the president traveled to Lagos some weeks back, and on his way back from Jumat service, people were shouting, "Oh, we are hungry! Oh, we are hungry!" These are public opinions, and there were of course different public affairs analysts who are on national TV, talking about the harsh economic realities of the country. These are public opinions, and these public opinions are usually harvested and channeled into public policies, basically to ameliorate the sufferings of the people. And of course, political parties recruit and train candidates for public offices. Again, this is another sore point that doesn't happen. They should be recruiting and training candidates for, public offices. But the question is, are they doing that? And this is why when you find the kind of leaders, the kind of people we have in leadership position today, you now begin to question yourself, to what extent has the political parties contributed to providing the right orientation to these individuals so that when they come into public offices, they're able to do well? We have, just some months ago, we have the gates. I mean, the issues in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, where political officers who have been appointed into office cut away such, humongous amounts of money. So you begin to ask yourself, how were these people recruited? How have they been trained? What kind of orientation has the political parties provided? Has the parties told them that, look, appointment into political positions is not for the purpose of self-aggrandizement? Has that been well communicated? Why do we still have pilferage happening in government? And I dare say that the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs is not the only ministry where such gates happened. Across most of the ministries, all of these things are happening. Across most. If you subject the ministries to forensic audits, I bet you'll be amazed at the kind of massive corruption. And this is not just me making allegations against the ministry, but typically these things are happening almost on a daily basis. Okay? Now, there are certain operational imperatives that political parties must maintain. And this is basically to enable them perform all of the tasks that we have mentioned in the previous slides and guarantee the rights and obligations of citizens, okay, as enshrined in the Constitution. So these operational imperatives include things like the freedom of organization, the freedom to stand for election, the freedom of speech and of assembly, the provision of a fair and peaceful competition among parties and candidates. And the reason why we are mentioning this is because, of course, you know that when elections are approaching, based on the political party that is in government, whether at the national or the state, they tend to create certain policies that hinder opposition candidates from having access to certain utilities or infrastructure in the states. Sometimes they make certain policies that hinder other opposition from being able to sell themselves to the masses of the people. For instance, you hear there are billboard fee running into millions of naira just because of electioneering campaign. After then, you don't hear anything anymore. So these are some of the things, the reasons why it becomes imperative to respect the constitution, because the constitution of the party derives from the ground norm of the country, the constitution of Nigeria. And I know that the constitution of Nigeria says any other law that is inconsistent with the provisions of the constitution, that other law shall, to the extent of that inconsistency, be null and void. So the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is supreme, such that it is supreme over the constitution of any political party. So all the constitutions of political parties draw their spirits from the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And within the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, there are operational imperatives that political parties must respect. That's why we are mentioning this. And one of them is provision of fair and peaceful competition. Mechanisms to ensure plurality, inclusion in the electoral process, and contacts with electoral bodies, a level playing field, and freedom from discrimination. So no one is discriminating against you because you are a woman. No one is discriminating against you because you are a young man or a young girl, as much as you are of age. You have attained what is called universal adult suffrage. You can stand for election, and you can also vote for somebody of your choice or a party of your choice. Media access and fair reporting is also guaranteed, and then transparent and accountable political financing. How do political parties generate money? Where do their resources come from? So there has to be accountability, there has to be openness, there has to be transparency. And INEC has developed guidelines that all political parties must adhere to, especially when it comes to resource mobilization. So political parties are institutions of democracy. They compete in elections and offer citizens a choice in governance. That is, you have an opportunity to select or elect the candidate of your choice as presented by the political parties. In opposition, they can hold government to account, and I've given an example of that. Now, when citizens join political parties, they volunteer their time, donate money, and vote for their leaders as well within the political parties. In doing so, they're exercising their basic democratic rights. That's what they are doing. Participation of citizens in political parties offer unique benefits, e.g., it gives you an opportunity to influence policy at the party level before it gets to, political office holders. You're able to choose and engage political leaders, and also you're able to run for office if you belong to a political party. These are some of the advantages. If you are looking to hone your skills in politics, join a political party. And this is the reason why I'm so impressed with your ED, because this is a very young man who went into politics and rose to become a national public secretary of a political party in Nigeria, and while serving in the party, he was able to influence policies. That's what it means, within the political party. So if you are not in the political party, you cannot influence anything within that political party. And at the time we were also in office, we were able to influence certain political party, decisions and policies. And because we're looking at having a new Nigeria, so a lot of what we're doing, we're geared towards ensuring that we have plurality, we have inclusion, we knock off discrimination, whether based on gender or age, ethnicity or religion. So these are things you can influence at the party level. However, in some countries, political parties do not respect the rights of citizens to participate and are not accountable to voters. Now, I said in some countries, and I'm sure you agree with me that even in Nigeria, we have the same thing. Some of the political parties we have do not respect the rights of citizens to participate. They deny people, they stand against people's ambitions, and they are not even accountable to the members of the party. You hear, oh, this party made billions of naira, and suddenly you hear, oh, the billions have disappeared, and no one is giving account. No one is held to account for those resources. So it's not just other countries. In Nigeria, we have the same situation. Now, party management. Political parties are guided in its structure and function by the following: party constitution and manifesto, codes of conduct for members, conventions. Conventions here include previous agreement resolutions, regulations, party standing rules, and extant guidelines. And then we have customs, derived from the culture, procedures, practices, e.g. consensus that were built during engagements, either at town hall meetings, at the community levels, and so on. And then we have judicial pronouncement. Judicial pronouncement becomes part of our laws. We have the electoral laws and then the constitution of the country, which of course is the ground norm, the overall. So all of these are the instruments by which political parties are managed. And it's very important for us to know this. Now we are going specific to look at structure. Note, and please note, participants of this cohort are going to have access to this presentation. I'm sure the Electoral College is going to make this available so that you have time to also study the material and do your further research to understand and broaden your understanding of political party structure. In this wise, I'm going to list few examples. I'm not going to mention everything that I have here on the slide. I'll give some examples and then I'll talk through them based on current experiences and for reasons of time. Now, what then are the structures of political party? So the big question that we've been talking about, having now known political parties, their evolution, how relevant they are in our political democratic dispensation, how political parties are managed, what political parties are supposed to do. Now we've known all of that. Now I want to talk about the structures. So many people, when you hear structure, you begin to wonder, what is this structure? What is structure? It's simple. We've defined this. From policy to law to systems, they all speak to structure. But fundamentally, there are real structures of a political party, and these are the structures. The critical structures of a political party are as follows. One, you have the World Executive Committee. We have the World Congress. We have the Local Government Executive Committee. We have the Local Government Area Congress. We have the Senatorial District Executive Committee. We have the Senatorial Congress. We have the State Working Committee of the party. We have the State Executive Committee of the party. We have the State Party Congress. We have even the State Caucus. We have State Elders Forum. These are not here, but they are all party structures. And then we have the Zonal Working Committee. We have the Zonal Executive Committee. We have the Zonal Congresses. We have the National Working Committee of the party. We have the National Executive Committee of the party. We have the Board of Trustees of the party. It's instructive to know that the Board of Trustees only exists at the national level, not at the states. Because when the party is going to be registered, it is the Board of Trustees that does the registration of the party. Then we have the National Caucus and finally the National Convention. And please, it's important to note this. These structures I've mentioned here are not exhaustive. There can be as many as you can even conceive. It is all based on the party and what the party wants to have and what they want those structures to do for them. But importantly, I want us to note that when you talk about structure, when you hear a party say, oh, you don't have structure at the local government level, this is what we are talking about. At the local government level, What are the structure? We have the Ward Executive Committee, the Ward Congress, the Local Government Executive Committee, and the Local Government Area Congress. These are the structures of the party at the local government level. Now, I'll just pick a few and talk about their function. Now, we have the Ward Executive Committee. What do they do? The Wards of this Executive Committee administers the party at the ward level. Mind you, the ward is the smallest unit of the political party, the smallest unit of political structure, okay? And then we have the Ward Executive Committee that oversees the ward, and basically they administer the party at the ward, they raise funds for the party, they mobilize for membership of the party at the ward level, they draw up strategies for political campaigns at the ward level, they mobilize voters for the party, implement the decision of the ward congress and other organs of the party, they receive the ward auditor report and perform such other function as may be in the interest of the party and as may from time to time be assigned to it by higher organs of the party. So this is the lowest organ or structure of the party. This structure, called the Ward Executive Committee, is like the executive arm of government that implements, brings up ideas, raises funds, drives membership, ensure inclusivity in the party and all of that. But we also have the Ward Congress. So the Ward Congress is made up of, the Ward Congress consists of all elected political office holders and registered members of the party, and they meet once a year. What's their function? They receive the reports of the officers of the ward, they receive auditors' report, approve the budget. So if they approve budget, it means they are performing legislative functions. So the congresses, whether at the ward, local government, or state, serve as the legislative part of the political party. So they elect members of the Ward Executive Committee. So you see, they have another important function. It is at the ward congresses that the executive members of the ward committees are elected, and then conduct primaries for ward elections, carry out such other functions as may be in the interest of the party. Now, the ward elections, of course, provides the opportunity for election of all these councillors and all of that. So this is how important the party structures at the ward level is. So that's why no political party can survive without the political, the structures of political parties. These structures are very important. Now, this is at the ward level. You also have the local government. So at the local government, you have the local government executive, and you have all of their functions circumscribed here, as you can see on the slide. And then you also have the local government area congress, which serves like the legislative organ of the party at the local government level. Like I said, I'm not going to spell out everything. I'm just going to give some indications so that we have a grasp of what the political party structures are about. I'm sure at this time you're already seeing that these structures are very important. So the local government area congress is made up of the party chairman and other members of the local government area executive committee. You also have all the national, please note, all the national, zonal, and state executive committee members of the party who are from that local government. They are also members of the local government area congress. So you see, it's an expanded forum, bigger than the local government executive committee. Now, the elected local government council chairman, the vice chairman, the councillors who are members of the party in that local government are automatic members of the local government area congress. And then you also have members of the board of trustees of the party. Remember, I said the board of trustees exists only at the national level. So members of the board of trustees who are from that local government are automatic members of the local government area congress. Then all chairmen and secretaries of the ward executive committee, don't forget, local government, all the wards are, there are wards under the local government, okay? So all the ward chairmen and secretaries who are under that local government are also members of the local government area congress. And then you have 3 delegates from each of the ward. Okay, if there are 11 wards, it means you will have 3 times 11, that is 33 delegates who are members of the local government area congress and who are elected during the ward congresses, at least one of whom shall be a woman. And this is basically to ensure gender inclusion, gender balancing in the elections. So they make up the local government area congress, which serves as the local government legislative arm of the party at the local government level. So these are the structures. I will move very quickly, and they have their function. We have other structures: the state caucus, the state elders committee, the state executive committee, state party congress, state assembly congress, house of representative congress, senatorial district congress. Now, all of these things I'm mentioning is based on the political party. Some political parties may not have all of this. Some also make it explicit to have all of this in place. Then we have the state party congress. The state party congress is the legislative arm of the party at the state level. So at the state level, you have the state executive committee, you have the state party, state working committee, and then you have the state party congress. So the party congress approves the budget, elect officers of the state executive committee, elect the governorship candidate of the party, receive reports from officers of the party, and receive the state party auditor's report. Now, we'll move to what we call the National Working Committee. The National Working Committee of the party is another important structure at the national level, and their work is basically administering the party, the day-to-day activities of the party at the national level. They comprise of the national chairman, the deputy chairman, national vice chairman. The national vice chairman are usually across elected based on the 6 geopolitical zones. So you have national vice chairman for the South-South, for the Southeast, for the Southwest, North Central, Northeast, Northwest. So you have the 6 geopolitical zones have national vice chairman. Then we have the national secretary, deputy treasurer, financial secretary, national organizing committee secretary, national organizing secretary, assistant national organizing secretary, public secretary, auditor, legal advisor, women leader, and the youth leader. And you may have more than this number based on the political party. So these officers run the day-to-day affairs of the party at the national level. And in case of emergency, of course, they can act for the National Executive Committee, subject to ratification by the National Executive Committee. You recall when Senator Abdullahi Adamu was elected the national chairman of the APC, and because the APC couldn't hold several NEC meetings because it was towards elections. So what NEC did, the NEC of the party passed a resolution mandating the National Working Committee to take decisions on its behalf. That means decisions that ordinarily were meant for the NEC to take were then taken by the National Working Committee of the party. So the National Working Committee can actually act on behalf of the National Executive Committee of the party. We also have the National Caucus. I will not go into details about this, but in some political parties, you have the National Caucus, and there's a reason for establishing the National Caucus. It has its own composition, and what I have here is based on the composition of the party for which I was, part of at the time. Now, there are functions circumscribed for that. We have what we call the National Legislative Caucus. Now, I will dwell here a little bit. The National Legislative Caucus structure is domiciled within the National Assembly. It's also, and basically it is made up of the members of a political party. So for instance, all members of the APC in the National Assembly both in the Senate and House of Rep, make up what you call the National Legislative Caucus for the APC. The PDP has its National Legislative Caucus. The Labour Party has its National Legislative Caucus. The NNPP has its National Legislative Caucus. So all the parties that have representation in the National Assembly have the National Legislative Caucus. So these caucuses meet to take critical decisions that affect the party and also for the good governance of the country. So decisions are made at this level before they get into plenary, and basically to agree on policies that they can support and policies that they cannot support, to agree on who will be their representative in the executive structure of the National Assembly. And don't forget, there are structures within the National Assembly. You have for instance, the Senate Services Committee. You have the Senate Committee on Health. You have the Senate Committee on Political Party Structures and Political Parties. You have the Senate Committee on Budget. You have the Senate Committee on Appropriation. You have Senate Committee on Information. So there are several, National Assembly structures basically established for purpose of ensuring good governance of the country. And the legislative caucuses of the parties are very critical in determining the leadership of those structures within the National Assembly, because that's where the decisions are made. And then we have what we call the NEC, the National Executive Committee of the party. The National Executive Committee of the party is superior to the National Working Committee. And because in composition, it is bigger than the National Working Committee of the party, because you have all the state chairmen. All the state chairmen are members of the NEC, including the National Working Committee members. And then you also have the elected members of the party. So for instance, the president of the country, given he's a member of APC, is a member of NEC. The vice president is also a member of NEC. The Senate president and other officers of the party are also members of NEC, as well as other political appointees, whether special advisors, senior special assistants. Well, not all senior special assistants, not all special advisors are members of NEC. Not all ministers are also members of NEC. So it's important to note this. But basically, those elected representatives of the party who are holding political offices are members of NEC. So the NEC also includes the members of the Board of Trustees, the caucuses, and so on and so forth. And they have their functions as well. So the next slide details the functions of the NEC, as we have here. They supervise and direct the work of the party and also its organs, including the national, zonal, state, local government organs of the party. The NEC convenes what we call the National Convention, which is the supreme organ of the party, and appoint a convention organizing committee which shall circulate convention information in advance. And they also make rules for the party and initiate policies and programs for the party. This is what the NEC does. So there are many other functions, as you can see here. I'll move very quickly to the next structure, which is the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees is the conscience of the party. It's the heart, the soul of the party. It's a very important organ of the party, usually made up of elites, elders, and very important members of the political party. Now, in some political party, all past and serving presidents and vice presidents of the Federal Republic who held or hold the respective posts as members are members of the party, are members of the Board of Trustees. All past serving national chairmen, deputy national chairmen, national secretaries of the party, in some instances, in some political parties, are members of the Board of Trustees. All past and serving presidents of the Senate and speakers of the House of Representatives in some political parties are members of the Board of Trustees. And then you have 10 founding members of the party. You have 2 women selected from each of the 6 geopolitical zones who make up members of the Board of Trustees. And please, this is based on the party. Different parties may have different membership of their Board of Trustees. Now, what are the functions of the Board of Trustees? They ensure that there is high standards of morality in all party activities. They harmonize, coordinate, review, and advise on administration programs, policies, and activities of the party. They coordinate the sourcing of party fund. They are vested with the assets of the party and serve as the custodians of the assets of the party. They mediate in disputes, undertake all other functions and activities as may be referred to it by different organs of the party. So this is a very important organ or structure of the party. Like I said, it is the soul, it is the conscience of the party. Whether the people have conscience is another matter entirely, but that is what it is. All right. Finally, we have the National Convention of the party. This, like I said, is the supreme organ of the party. This is where the laws of the parties are made and adopted. When laws are made at the convention and pass a resolution, they have wide-ranging effects. They are binding on all members of the party. This is the only organ of the party where laws can be made, where the constitution of the party can be amended, is only at the National Convention. No other organ of the party can amend the constitution of the party. It is only the National Convention that can do that. The National Convention also has its composition. As you can see, there is so many, I can't list all of them, And so all of these make up the composition. Members of the Zonal Working Committee, the state party chairmen and secretaries, including those of the Federal Capital Territory, party chairmen from local government areas, national delegate from each of the local government, all elected local government council chairmen of local government, who are members of the party, former members of the National Working Committee, former Senate President, Deputy President of the Senate, former speakers and their deputies, so many. So it's a very large organ, and it has several powers. Among the powers of the National Convention is the election of the presidential candidates of the party. That's one of the biggest functions of that structure, the election of the presidential candidate. So all presidential candidates are elected at the National Convention. The other second bigger function of the National Convention is the election of the party officials, the National Working Committee members. They are elected at the National Convention. So, and party officials can also be removed at the National Convention. So you see, this is a very, very important organ. It raises funds, it coordinates the activities of the party, it makes policies, it makes laws, elects officials to remove them, elect candidates, remove them. Anything that you want to do, this is where it can be done. So it's a highly political structure of a party. Highly political. So that's why you see people scramble to become delegates to the National Convention. And of course, just on a lighter note, there was a time during the last, before the last elections, when we had the conventions of the party, dollar was flowing, and people were now saying, oh, now we see why it's important to become a delegate to the National Convention. This is on a lighter note, but it just goes to underscore the fact that the National Convention of the party is a very important organ of the party. So if you elect anyhow delegates, they will give you anyhow candidates. If you elect credible delegates to the National Convention, you will get credible candidates. Please don't forget this. If you elect anyhow delegates, they will go and give you anyhow candidate. This is very important, and I know why I'm emphasizing it. So the National Convention also have its functions, just as we've noted there. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have touched on political parties. We have touched on political party structures. We have attempted to demystify the whole thing around party structure. And that is how we have tried to make it very simple for everyone to understand. And for me, I want to add that partnerships are also structures. We've seen parties come together to form a structure, like when Yaidi talked about CUPP, Coalition of United Political Parties. These were structures inspired by some leading political parties like the PDP, just to make sure that they're able to wrestle power from any other political parties. So they're also structures. So structures exist at different levels. You have mergers. When political parties merge, they form a structure. When partnerships are established, a structure is also established. When you have alliances, it becomes a structure. And you can think about many others. So political party structures are those structures that exist within the party, but there are also structures that exist outside of the party, like these ones I've mentioned here. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time and for entertaining all my stories and rambles here and there. So these are some of the references I assessed in preparing this lecture. So thank you, and over to you, Chalia.
Thank you very much, sir, for that detailed facts. We really learned a lot on party structures, and I believe we are all in a political party. If you're not, I'll advise you join one because it's very important. Just as how he said at the end, if you elect anyhow delegates, you get anyhow candidates. So let's take note of that. So you can join the political parties to avoid complaints, just as how it is said also in the last class. So do we have questions? You can raise your hands up. Okay. Justin, I've asked you to unmute.
Yeah, thank you, facilitator. This was a wonderful one. It was a very brilliant presentation. I really love this. I have basically 3 questions. I don't know, I should take them in a swap or one after another. Can you hear me?
Can go ahead. Yes, can go ahead.
Okay. My first question is on the defections. If you look at Nigeria, you discover that defection, elected officials switching from one party to another has become a phenomenon in the country. In fact, recently I saw a hashtag APDC, all those group of people together. Now, this is it raises a very severe concern to the stability of governance and the political structures in the country. My question, sir, is how do we handle this issue of people jumping from one a political party to the other? That's number one. Then the second question is, from your discussions, it is clear that political parties, both ancient and modern parties, have operated with some kind of ethno-regional divisions. And this limits their national appeal. So how do we address these challenges with a lasting solution? That's my second question. And then the last question, sir, is as I listened to you spoke, I discovered that if you look at Nigeria, because it is bringing what you are teaching us to bear in reality, that we can understand better what you are trying to impute on us. So if you look at the country, you will discover that parties often revolve around powerful individuals rather than clear ideologies. Now, how do we as Nigerians handle the issue of this kind of a system or an arrangement where it appears individuals are the one that drives political parties? I don't want to mention names, but if you look at the political parties that we have, you can see this picture playing out clearly. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, so should we get all the questions or you answered this first?
Okay, I see. If there is another hand, let's take it, and then I would,
Okay.
because some questions might align with the ones that have been asked.
Okay, sir. Yakubu, I've asked you to unmute and ask your question.
Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. You can go ahead.
Yakubu Aliyu. Let me thank the presenter. The presentation, though the network on my side is very poor, but I was able to pick one or two from the presentation. And the part I knew I got very well was the part of the political structure, party structures. He talked about the ward being the smallest structure or the smallest party structures. I want to ask, what will we describe the structures at the unit level? Because recently, some political parties have, even in their constitutions, inserted and recognized structures at the unit level. So what are they not party structures for the presenter to describe the ward structure as the smallest structure? Secondly, I still want to, this is just like a contribution. The last speaker was talking about participation, about some individuals holding on to a party or issue of delegates, and the personal experience is that most of the people who are supposed to participate to choose people based on their conscience and choose the right people are shying away from the being members of political party. And this experience I've gone through each political cycle will come with those experiences. People will shy away from joining the political parties. So my experience is that when people, like now, the lectures we are receiving and the end goal from these presentations we are having, people should now be should have the knowledge to now know, this is what is happening, happening in political parties, and this is what is demanded of us as citizens of the country, to also become part of this political party, because whether we like it or not, it's from the political parties that our leaders must be produced. So that is the only question I had was what I asked, and this is my contribution. We should put more, we should make sure we participate in the processes of formation of these political parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie, can we take one more question and then I will address the first three questions at once? Sophia, Charlie, are you there?
Okay, I think Charlie just got disconnected. Maybe her network. Okay, Sophia, I've asked you to unmute. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. That was a very insightful session. Thank you, Mr. Olivenes. I have two questions. When you talked about the development in the Second Republic, you mentioned a couple of times parties being on the left and parties being on the right. I wasn't sure what that meant. I wanted you to please explain that. And then when you talked about the National Convention, you said something about you made us understand the importance of electing credible leaders into the National Convention. since that would affect the quality of candidates that we would get. So I wanted to ask who actually elects the members of the National Convention. Is that something that citizens do? Because I don't remember ever voting for people who are part of the National Convention. So can you please, who elects the National Convention delegates? Please clarify that for me. Thank you.
Did you get the question, sir?
Yes, I got the question. Thank you. I'm going to address those. So let me start from the first person, and then I'll come to Sophia's questions on the composition of the National Convention. Okay, so defections. Why do we still have defections, and why do we have why do defections happen? Unfortunately, I must tell you, and this now I'm going to go from what we have observed in the country today. Now, there are laid down procedures according to those experts in legality or legal issues, and also from judicial perspectives. And this, of course, informed why there has been so much ease in movement from one party to the other. And of course, recently we hear, I also heard the term APDP or APCPDP also. And this happened because of the situation we have in one of the states where elected legislative members of a party had to defect, and in fact announce their defection, publicly to another party, despite given that there was no presumed crisis or conflict in the party. So the whole thing around APDP, came up, and then all of it. Now, again, you see, in some instances, the judiciary has made certain pronouncement, and in other instances, we found what we call the conspiracy of silence, which of course had warranted all of these movements happening. People defecting from one political party to another within the legislative structures. Meanwhile, our constitution clearly indicates that you can only be elected into office through a political party. In other words, it is the political party that sponsors you into that legislative seat that you occupy, which also means that if you defect from that party to another party, you automatically lose that seat. That is what is in the law. But in all sincerity, I'm not a lawyer. In all sincerity, now, when someone defects, the law tells you that there is a procedure. That procedure is what many of us seem not to understand today. But who am I to query the law when the law has made, or when the judiciary, or query the judiciary when the judiciary has made pronouncement? The judiciary is the only one that is mandated, that has the power to make pronouncement with respect to certain actions. And when the judiciary pronounces that, none of us can speak. Nobody can speak. You can only go to the court to challenge that, to the higher court to challenge that. And if the higher court upholds the decision of the lower court, it is all that you can do specifically to accede to the decisions of that judicial pronouncement. And this is what we are seeing. And that's why I say the conspiracy of silence that we see within the judiciary is what is occasioning this continuous defection from one party to another. As it stands, there is no Uhuru. As it stands, there is no Uhuru, because we are going to continue to see this. Look, if actions are taken that are disciplinary in nature, to say that if you defect from a party to another, you automatically lose your seat, that you don't even have to go into any form of judicial interpretation for that to happen. You won't find people moving from one party to the other. But as much as that doesn't happen, then we'll continue to see defections happening across party lines. That's one. Ethno-regional representation of political parties. Very true. Very true. And of course, like you noted, it limits their national appeal. So anytime you have political parties that are more of regional representation, they won't have national appeal. They will not. And we've seen that even in the last elections and even in previous elections that have happened. I don't want to mention, specifics, but you are very correct. Your observation is true that regional representation of political parties limits national appeal. That's very true. I'm not going to contest that. And in fact, I think you presented it, very well, very, very well. It truly limits national appeal. And what that means is that if you have a candidate that is running for presidency, you can't win elections at the national level because the party is seen to be a representation of either a regional political bloc, and so on and so forth. So for a party to win national elections, it must have a national appeal. It must have a national spread. It must have representation across at least two-thirds majority of the states for it to be able to win. This is the reason why the Constitution, the electoral law, specifies that for anybody to emerge as a president, you must win at least 20, you must have at least 25% in two-thirds of the states. So if you don't have that, there is no way you can win national elections. So yes, you are very correct. I agree with you. And the question around political parties revolving along powerful individuals. Again, this is the failure of our political parties. This is the failure. This is the failure of our political parties. You see, when political parties are not strongly founded on ideology, what you have is a situation where individuals become the arrowheads of those political parties. For instance, I'll give you an example. When I was in ANS, something happened. Certain individuals had approached the party, for membership. And these were individuals who hold significant resources. And for a party that, of course, was new and basically trying to establish itself across substructures of the society, the tendency is naturally to open up to such individuals and pander to their biddings. But this is what we said as a party. You cannot, as an individual, despite your resources, okay, be allowed to take on certain, tasks of the party on your own. So if you must bring in resources into the party, those resources must go directly to the, treasury of that party. So your contributions must go to the treasury of the party. You must be seen to be making donations directly to the party. And the party can run with whatever contributions you have made in a manner that allows for the leadership of the party to impact different, segments and different geopolitical zones of the party. So for instance, you may come from Cross River State and bring in so much resources. It doesn't mean that the resources you have brought will only be applied to Cross River State where you have come from. No, whatever you have donated, that's why it's a donation to the party. You donate to the party. So the party can apply those resources to service other states as well. When you allow a situation where someone from a particular geopolitical zone or from a particular state contribute resources for party to take certain decisions in the state that person comes from, at the end of the day, what you are doing is building power around that person. The person becomes a go-to person. People in that region also begin to go around those people. So that's why you have a situation where individuals who hold significant resources become like the go-to people in a political party, despite having a party leadership in place. So there are ways to mitigate against this, and this is why INEC had made clear provisions on how party should be funded. And if those provisions that INEC had made in the form of guidelines are followed through within the political parties, it will limit the tendency to have, individuals becoming the go-to people in a party rather than the party leadership structure. And we've also had part of some of the challenges we are having is situations where you have presidents who have emerged from a political party become leaders of the party. Meanwhile, the leader of the party is the national chairman of the party. So ascribing leadership of the party to a president who is not the president of the party, but the president of Nigeria is also another misnomer, and it shouldn't happen. The leadership of the party is the party leadership elected at a convention. So the national leader of the party should be the national chairman of the party and not the president. These were some of the contentions that happened under PDP in the time of Chief Audu when he was chairman and Obasanjo when he was the president of the country. The contestation as to who is actually the leader of the party. Okay, and it came up in one of the conventions, because you see what that does is that you are tying the political structure to an individual, which shouldn't be the case, because you have a leadership structure of the party. So if you want to enforce discipline, the chairman and the leadership of the party must be seen to be at the apex of the party. Even the president, who is a member of the party, should be just a member of the party. Yes, we understand that he occupies a special place, but he should be a member of the party and should come under the subjection of the party leadership. Under Adams Oshomole in APC, the same thing happened. Yes, he recognized Buhari as the leader. But of course, if you watch his body language, you could see that he tries to assert himself as the leader of the party. But of course, because there is a convention in place that a president is the leader of the party, sometimes it comes under subjection to the president at the time. So these are some of the things that political parties must be wary of, okay? Making sure that the party leadership is empowered to take its place and provide leadership and guidance to the party, and not somebody who has been elected as president and president of the country now being the leader of the party. I mean, it's a misnomer. It shouldn't be. You cannot probate and reprobate at the same time. An elected president is the president of the country and not president of the party. So these are things that political parties must do to ensure that it reigns supreme and able to rein in anybody who has been elected into any office to come under subjection of the party. So the second question is on unit level structure. My friend, you are very correct. And pardon me, like I said, I try making references to the fact that the structures we have here may not be exhaustive, because for some political parties, you may have more than what is here. And I think I said that. So if you have unit level executives, you are very correct. You are very, very correct. And truly, the word may not be the least political party structure that we have. You have the unit level, and there may be another level even beyond the unit as well. So it's important to take note of some of these, nuances that exist out there. For different political parties, you might have different structures. And all of the structures I mentioned, not all the parties have the same kind of structures. Some are also different. So yes, you are very correct. For some, you may have units, leadership, they are there, and that, of course, becomes the least or the lowest structure of the party at that level. And if there is another beyond the unit, then, of course, that also becomes the least or the lowest level of the party structure at that level. So you are very correct, and thanks for the contribution you made to the first speaker. And finally, the third question was on the leftist and rightist movement. Okay, so now, political parties that are said to be leftist in orientation are those that seek to have what we call social equality, egalitarianism, okay? Those ones that looks to have more like a welfarist, people-centered kind of governance frameworks, as opposed to the rightist ones that are considered as the conservatives. Oh, let's maintain the status quo. Let's not rock the system. Let's maintain it the way it is. Okay? Those are rightist organizations. So the conservatives are the rightists. The leftists are the ones that believes in a welfarist kind of arrangement, where you have social inclusion, social equality, equanimity, egalitarianism, and all of that. Fairness, justice, not really justice, but have that equality amongst people, parties, structures, individuals, and so on. Egalitarianism, looking at egalitarianism speaks to, one of the critical things that citizens look forward to see is to see a society where there is inclusion, where there is balance, where there is fairness, where there is no discrimination. Okay, that's all what the leftist parties seek to have. Education for all, universal health for all of those things are parts of egalitarianism. They are all part of the social equality systems that we hope to have in our political space. But then we have the conservatives who wants to maintain the status quo. So that's what differentiates between the two of them. So when you hear leftist and you hear rightist, it is actually speaking to those ideologies around conservatism and ideologies about progressiveness, welfarism, egalitarianism, social equality, and all of that. So that's what now, finally, talking about election of delegates. Now, I did mention that there are delegates that are elected to the National Convention during the World Congresses. So that's why all the structures of political parties are very important. And that's why the Electoral College deemed it fit to actually have a session on party structure. Very, very important. So when they are having World Congresses, please pay attention. That's why they say politics is local. If you belong to a political party, make it to your ward. Be at your ward level. Be part of the World Congress, because some delegates are going to be elected at the World Congress, to the State Party Congress. At the State Party Congress, delegates are going to be elected that will go to the National Convention. In fact, there are delegates from the World Congress that will go to the National Convention. So all of these delegates, you need to know at what party structures they are elected to the National Convention. If you know, then you are able to participate in their election, so that you don't just have anyhow delegates going to the National Convention, because they definitely are going to give you anyhow candidates. And we've seen that. Some candidates of parties that we elect into offices ordinarily wouldn't have been the candidates we would have loved to cast our vote for. But those are the options that have been thrown against us. And I don't want to mention names. Across the states as governors, across the states and local and legislators at the state level, and even legislators at the national level. We do not have so much choices because we did not participate in how they are elected as candidates in the various congresses that held at the states. So this is the challenge. So for the National Convention, we must monitor how delegates are elected to the National Convention, and that is by participation. It's only that by participation that we can be able to guarantee that we have the right delegates elected to the National Convention, who of course are going to elect the flag bearer of the party. Take a look at the convention, the different convention that produces the different candidates. Were there no other candidates? Pick the APC, for instance. Who were the candidates? We had, what's his name? The former vice president, Professor Emil Sibanjo. We had Rotimi Amechi. We had even Godswill Akpabio, who later stepped down anyway. We have Kayode Fayemi. We had several others. Some eventually stepped down. And then we also had our current president, who was also seeking to flag the party flag. But eventually, many stepped down. Those who did not step down, how many votes did they have? Bola Ahmed Tinubu had the highest vote. Go to PDP. There were other candidates, other aspirants. We have the current minister of the FCT, Chief Ezebunwo Nyesom Wike. We had Tambuwal. We had former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. We had other persons who had the highest vote eventually, Atiku, and he emerged. You go to Labour Party, the same thing, and we had P2B. You have other parties. But the question is, just look across the party and see how these different flag bearers emerged. Were there alternatives? Yes, there were. But what happened? Delegates elected who they wanted or who they've been primed to elect. So this is why I said electing credible delegates will result in electing credible candidates to flag the party's flag at the national level or at the state. Electing anyhow delegates will result in electing anyhow candidates. And at the end of the day, that limits the choices that we have in terms of who to cast our vote for. So at the end of the day, we are forced to cast votes for just those who are there. So that's when we begin to do what some people call tinini tanana. So, and that's not what works in politics. The Tocqueville says, in every electioneering process, the people get the kind of leadership that they deserve. And so that's what happens. So that's for the three. Charlie, over to you.
Okay, wow. That was really, really enlightening. Thank you so much, sir. Our time is fast spent. Sophie, I believe your question has been answered. So we just have Dr. John and Ahmed. Please, I will just give you 30 seconds. Let the questions be very brief because our time is fast spent. I can see a question in the chat box from Daniel Abba. Daniel Abba, I went through your question and these questions will be answered by other classes. I see you're asking about manifesto. There's a class on manifesto. You're asking about representation of women at the party system. There's also a class on how to proper representation of women. So I think we'll just hold on for those classes as our time is fast spent. So I'll just ask Dr. John to unmute. You have just 30 seconds to ask your question, and then I'll take a question from Ahmed, and then we'll wrap up the class. Dr. John, please go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, sir. Thank you for the awesome presentation. Straight to the question, sir. We've talked about political parties, and one of the major things I've noticed about political parties is the use of a zoning formula in electing their party executives and generally, even up to the presidential elections. So please, I would like to know, what are the negative impact of zoning in a party system in Nigeria? If there are, what are the advantages? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure facilitator got that question. Ahmed, please just ask yours so he'll answer them together.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My own is not a question, it's rather a suggestion and another light that I would like to add to the first speaker that asked a question: how are we going to hold those that are like jumping from one party to another while they are elected in one in a party, they will go to another party, they will jump to another party. He said our lecturer here, representative, told us that yes, in the constitution under section 69 there is a provision, something like that, that mandates the judiciary to interpret laws that will like ban this very individual that is jumping from one party to another. But as I did go through research yesterday due to our classes on judicial classes on how are we going to hold our government and people that are governing us accountable. I came across a document. It's called a recall document that was initiated by chairman of the INEC based on the petition he received, signed by more than 1/2 person registered voters from one particular House of Representatives. So the petition is signed by in arrangement and in according to the polling units, wards, local government areas, and constituency. They all matched, the whole masses has matched themselves.
Your
from
30
unit
seconds is up. Ahmed, can you summarize the question, please?
Yes. So my question here is that why is it that the masses within the party constitution doesn't have that power, while in the constitution or the acts of INEC, it constitutes that power? Why are they not putting it within, since it is already in the law? The various parties that are running the governance now. That's my question.
All right, thank you very much, Ahmad. Very good points you have raised. And yeah, I didn't touch on that, but I'm happy that you brought it up. First of all, when you defect from your party to another, there are legal requirements. And the legal requirements are that the party must either be in crisis or there must be a division in the party that has rendered the party unable to conduct the affairs of the party. Under such circumstance, people can defect. So if you defect when there is that situation, you are not going to lose your seats, right? You are not going to lose your seat. Now, if you recall, in 2015, on 2014, in PDP, there was a clear division in the party. For those of us who were around, you agree with me that a structure called NPDP, that is New PDP, was formed. And it was made up of the candidate of the PDP, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, some major bigwigs of the party, Bukola Saraki, quite a number of them left the PDP into what we call the NPDP. So it made it difficult for the PDP to have self-governance. So you had PDP running against itself, and that led to the electoral loss that PDP had under the then President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. I'm sure some of us remember this very well. That was a clear division. But in a situation where in a political party, there is no division and you are defecting, the law clearly says that you cannot do that. And if you do that, you lose your seats, because it is a party that sponsored you as an individual into office as a legislator. So when you defect, you lose that seat automatically. However, like I said, we've had the conspiracy of silence, to this gale of defection that has happened without a judicial pronouncement that makes it very clear to everybody. Sometimes some of the judicial pronouncements seem to be so ambiguous that people seem to now go to test it in another court, higher court, and you never get resolutions. So these are things that has really stood against enforcing compliance with the requirements for defection to happen. The second part, which you mentioned, Ahmad, and I agree with you, is the recall of members. The issue of recall of members has always been there. It has always been in the Constitution. But that is by the constituents from where that legislature would have been elected. For instance, in a constituency A, okay, if a candidate or a lawmaker elected from constituency A goes under the platform of PDP or APC, goes into the state legislative house or to the National Assembly and defects to another party, it behoves on the constituents to initiate the recall procedure. And if they successfully do that, it will also serve as a deterrent to others that may want to follow suit by defecting to another political party. So that clause is still there in the Constitution. But of course, there are reasons why we've not seen recall procedures happen rampantly the way the Constitution had actually prescribed that. There are reasons. And so because of time, we may not go into that, okay? Now, but just to say that that provision is still there in the Constitution. The other question is on zoning formula and if it has any negative impact. Look, Nigeria is a multi-ethnic society, so widely diverse across ethnic, religious, political, and so on. Now, in order to accommodate all of these dynamics of religion, ethnicity, political leanings, and all of that, this zoning thing was established. And in fact, if you look at it in the Constitution, some people tell you zoning is in the Constitution. But what is in the Constitution is that the governance and representation of people in political positions must be done in a way that accommodates all of the ethnic representations in Nigeria. Can you see that? So, in order to now fine-tune that provision of the Constitution, parties came up with the issue around zoning, that to allow a situation where the ethnic representation in Nigeria can be accommodated in governance, we need to zone. Take, for instance, if you look at the Nigerian space is further geopolitically divided into 6. And so, according to some, if power is rotated according to the 6 geopolitical zones, it will allow for equality. It will allow for equanimity. It will allow for social justice. That is what many people have posited. But do we really have that? We don't. So we have what you call power shift from north to south and back to north again. So we don't really follow the geopolitical representations. So the whole idea of zoning is to allow for equality. So if you have the north, yesterday it was the north in the person of Buhari, today is the south in the person of Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the president of Nigeria. But either, whether it is the north or the south, there is also provisions of the Constitution that has to be followed to allow for representation. So you have what you call the federal character. The whole idea of federal character is also to allow for all of this to happen. So zoning has advantage. Zoning can make regions or ethnic regions or zones that wouldn't ordinarily have had a shot at power to have access to power. So for me, as a person, I see zoning as having more of advantages. But yes, of course, it has its own disadvantage. For instance, if you zone power to a particular region and the region present a no fit for a particular position and tell you that's the person we have, then you have a problem already. Because the person goes there and messes things up. And who suffers? It is the generality of Nigerians that will suffer. If you are lucky, power is zoned to another region, and that region presents the best candidate. Who benefits? Everybody benefits. So the biggest disadvantage I see is that in zoning, sometimes mediocres are allowed to come into office. And that's only when you have issues. But truth be told, there is no region of this country that does not have intellectual, that does not have credible persons. There is no region. So that brings us back to the issue around participation and inclusion. How are we involved in the process of leadership selection in this country. The biggest question which some of us are researching into today is the issue of our leadership recruitment process. Our leadership recruitment process as a country is faulty. And we need to go back to the basics to begin to work out how best we can correct and ensure that we have the right leadership recruitment process. I thank you all.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. This was such an insightful class. I'm sure the students have learned quite a lot this evening. Thank you so much for always honoring our invitation. Thank you for your time. We do not take this for granted at all. Thank you for the knowledge shared. You know, it's always beautiful to hear you speak at each cohort, and you know, I always learn one or two things for every cohort that we invite you here. Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of the college, we really appreciate your presence. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your commitment to the college and to political literacy. Thank you, sir. And to everyone that was around for the class, I trust you got a lot of value. Please, can we appreciate our facilitator in the chat box? Let's appreciate him in the chat box. Okay, someone is asking for your email, sir. If that's fine, can we go ahead and share that with the students?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead.
Okay. All right, that's fine. I'll share his email with you all. So if you need further clarifications or you have some questions that you still need more answers to, then you can feel free to get in touch with him directly. So thank you all, and I'm sure you've seen the results of your assignment. You've seen the feedback. So tighten up your belts because the ride is just beginning. We're just warming up. Yeah, this is just gear one, so get ready. So by next week, we'll continue with the classes. Have a blessed and beautiful week ahead. And this is good night, and God bless. You can help us end the class, sir. You have the host function. Thank you so much once again.
Thanks, everyone.